Hi, I'm Rachel, a resource expert and career coach for museum educators who are stretched thin but long to fall in love with their world-changing work. After over 15 years with my own hands in the glitter, I know how it feels when your board thinks your work is childish because you work with children. I know how hard it is to lead a tour on a difficult subject, and I know the frustration of waiting on a school bus that is 20 minutes late. Or worse, 10 minutes early. As I'm heading towards the second half of my career, I find myself with a passion to help my fellow educators reverse the chronic state of being overworked and underappreciated so that they can reclaim their creativity and emotional energy. Join me and my museum buddies as we share our best tips, tricks, and techniques for modern museum education. Hi! Welcome back to the 12 Days of Christmas Museum Education Edition, my holiday gift to the museum educator community. Over the last several days, I've been releasing short podcast episodes to help set you up for museum education success in 2025. And today, we're going to dive into a topic that I think can feel intimidating if you've never tried it, but it is so incredibly rewarding, and that is presenting at professional conferences. Sharing your knowledge and experiences with colleagues is an excellent way to grow both professionally and personally, but I know some people are uncertain about trying it. And so what happens, especially at smaller state level and regional conferences, is that the same people present every time. And as you know, I'm a really big proponent of more voices being heard. So I want to encourage you, if you've never presented before, that now is the time. But I get it. It can be really intimidating. I worked in the field for over a decade before I got up the nerve to present at a professional conference. But now it is my most favorite thing to do. So I put together a few tips to encourage and inspire you to try it if you've never done it before. All right, tip number 1 is to start small. If presenting at a large conference feels overwhelming, don't feel like you have to go big right out of the gate. And honestly, it can be really hard to get into some bigger conferences. So I would encourage you, if you've never presented at a conference before, to try a smaller conference or even a smaller opportunity. So many conferences offer opportunities for small sessions like poster presentations or lightning talks. That's how I actually got my feet wet in presenting at conferences. At the time, the regional conference that I attend here in the Southeast had a recurring session that, now that I think about it, I can't remember what it was called, but essentially it was like a lightning session, like a lightning round. And there were, I don't know, I want to say 10 people who present. You had 5 minutes and you were one of 10 people and you could present on anything. And you had like 20 slides. They had to be on an automatic timer. That was kind of actually stressful. So maybe don't do it that way. But that format gave me a chance to, like I said, get my feet wet without the pressure of having to prepare a full length session. So look into the options. You might also look into state level teacher association conferences. So I presented this past year at the Tennessee Art Educators Conference for the first time. I've presented multiple times at the Tennessee Council for the Social Studies Conference. So there are other places you can present other than your museum conferences. The key is to start somewhere that feels manageable. Another great way to ease into presenting is by co-presenting. And in fact, a lot of conferences prefer panels or multiple presenters on one session so that there are multiple viewpoints presented. So find a colleague who's also interested in sharing an idea and work together on a session. And that way you can lean on each other for support and guidance. And it really, especially if you are feeling nervous about presenting at a professional conference, doing it in a group is always easier. The second tip is to focus on what you know. So if you're feeling nervous about your first presentation, remember that the best presentations come from sharing what you know best. You don't need to be an expert in everything, but you are an expert in your own experiences. Think about a project that you've worked on, a program you've developed, or a problem that you've solved in your museum. Sharing your unique perspective and the lessons you've learned will make for a rich and authentic presentation. And to be honest, in my experience, that's what people who attend conferences want to know. That's what they want to hear. They want to hear success stories. They want to hear about your challenges. They want to hear about your failures because it both encourages and inspires them. So you never feel like you have to have all of the answers. Just focus on what you have done, what worked, and what you would do differently next time. Now, I will say this. when you're thinking about what it is specifically that you want to share at a conference, writing a compelling session proposal does take some practice. But I use a lot of the same techniques that I developed for writing good marketing copy, which I talked about. I think it was on day 3 of the 12 Days of Christmas series, but it was earlier in the series. I talked about tips for writing good copy, how to use action verbs and to set clear expectations and to tell your plans without giving everything away. And also particularly calling out focused takeaways. That's really key. So when you're writing a session proposal, all of those same elements that you would put into a program blurb, you want to put those into your session proposal as well, so that you can clearly show that you have a good idea and that you were able to articulate that to your audience. My third tip is to plan, plan, plan. One of the best ways to reduce anxiety is to feel prepared. Sometimes museum educators feel a little bit, I don't know, I was going to say ridiculous. I don't know if that's the right word, but maybe ridiculous is the word, but they just feel so conflicted because they might give presentations all of the time to students or to families or to school groups, but then presenting at a professional conference feels like something they could never do. And I just validate that feeling and acknowledge that those are two very different audiences. And it is intimidating to present in front of people who are your peers. I think a lot of it imposter syndrome, where you are thinking that the audience might know more about this topic than you do. Whereas when you're presenting to a school group, you can feel usually pretty confident that you know more than they do. It feels like presenting at a conference should be something every museum educator feels comfortable doing, and yet it is not. So I want to validate that feeling. But if you are interested in this and want to try it, but then still feel anxious, one of the best ways to reduce that anxiety is to feel prepared. So start by outlining the key points that you want to cover and then build your presentation around those points. Just like when you were in middle school and you were learning to write an essay outline, you want to write yourself an outline for your presentation. And I would suggest you want to give yourself probably a good 20 to 25 minutes for question and answer time. There's no shame in having a conference session that ends early. People love to, have a little extra time to get some water or a coffee break. That will also give you time if you go over your talking points, you have a little bit of a cushion. So give yourself do some math here. So take your total session time, take out question time at the end, 20 to 25 minutes, and then whatever you have left, that's the time that you have. And if you've got multiple presenters, divide the time amongst yourselves. But when you're thinking about how many points do you want to make, I would encourage you to keep it simple. Maybe have 3 really strong points that you want to make, and then build out from there. If you have more time, add more in. If you think you're going to be crunched for time, you can just hit the highlights. But when you create a clear structure with an introduction, some main content, and a conclusion, people really appreciate that well-organized presentation. So make sure that you take the time to plan out what you're going to say and the order that you're going to say it in. I love to use Canva for easy slideshow design. They have a number of really professional looking, fun looking templates that you can just sort of plug and play your information into, so you don't have to also be a graphic designer, but feel like you've made a professional statement with your slideshow. Now, I mentioned that you want to give yourself some time for questions at the end. It's helpful to prepare your mind for what those potential questions might be. So if you were listening to this conference session, what are the questions that you would ask? And in fact, if you wanted to go the extra mile, you might even show your presentation or your outline to a friend or a colleague and see if they can tell you what questions they might ask. So you want to be thinking, what is it that the audience might want to know? What challenges or discussions might arise? So if you're thinking through those potential moments ahead of time, you can go into your presentation feeling confident and ready and less nervous that you're going to be caught off guard in the end. Now, the next tip kind of goes along with plan, and it is practice, practice, practice. The key to feeling confident in your delivery is to practice. Every time I'm going to present at a conference or present, even in my classes, it feels like every single one of my classes I have to do a presentation in. And even for those where I'm very confident in my information, I still practice the presentation beforehand just so that I can practice saying the words out loud in a certain order. It just makes me feel much more confident and ready to go when I'm standing in front of a group of people. Remember, you're building your confidence with every run through. So give yourself time to practice, and that will also help you feel more prepared. Now, the next tip is when you're actually doing the presentation to engage your audience. This is one of the ways to make your presentation memorable. It's just like when you're giving a field trip or a program and you want to engage those kids, you want to engage your peers at a professional conference. You don't have to have all the answers, but you don't want to present it in a dry lecture style. You want to be interactive, ask questions, share stories, use visuals that encourage participation. Remember, just like when you're giving a field trip, when your audience is actively involved, you will feel less like you're giving a speech and more like you're having a conversation. And that will help reduce your anxiety, and that will also raise the interest and the engagement of your audience. So it's a win-win for everybody. That's what you're looking for. And if you are afraid, and I do this is a tip that I do all of the time. If you're afraid that you're going to slide into lecture mode, you can add questions directly to your slide deck. So have a slide that doesn't have information. It has a question that you want the audience to consider, ponder, or maybe you want them to answer it out loud. So build those questions, build that interaction into your slide deck to help keep you on track so you don't slide into lecture mode and you stay in engagement, audience interactive mode. Now, lastly, remember that you are not alone. Lots of people are willing to help and support you in your journey to presenting at a conference. Speaking as someone who presents at conferences at least 2 to 3 times a year, I love to see people who've never presented get up and present. It's so rewarding for them. It's so rewarding for me as an audience member, and it is so rewarding for the field in general. It's good for us to share with each other what's working, what's not working, challenges and successes. That builds our field better than anything else. I really believe it builds our field better than almost anything else that we can do. So rely on that support network. Your coworkers, your colleagues, they want to support you. And if you feel like you don't have someone in your work life that wants to support you, just know that I support you. And if you need to reach out to me directly, reach out to me. Seriously, I'm not even kidding you. If you sent me an email and that said, hey, I listened to your podcast and I'm going to present at a conference for the first time and I'm a little bit nervous, I guarantee you I will send you an email back and just give you so much encouragement. I might even pick up the phone and give you so much encouragement it's so exciting. It's so exciting and it's so rewarding to present at a conference. If you've never done it, just take this as your inspiration. Find a conference in your area, nearby, maybe one that you've gone to for years and you've never had the gumption to get up and present, and find out what their deadlines are for session proposals. Put it in your calendar now so you're prepared and ready to send in that submission. And I just wanted to end with saying it is normal to feel nervous, but remember that every step you take from planning your topic to delivering your talk is an opportunity for growth. And again, the museum field thrives on collaboration and knowledge sharing. Your perspective is valuable. So whether your first presentation is big or it's small, it doesn't matter. It's a chance to contribute and make connections with others who share your passion. So just take a deep breath and start planning, embrace that process, and you will be amazed at how much you can learn from the experience. And you'll be amazed at how much you inspire others along the way. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you back here tomorrow for day 10 of the Museum Education 12 Days of Christmas. Thank you so much for joining us. If this episode has been helpful to you or interesting, please take a minute to like, subscribe, and leave a review, which will help other museum educators find this resource. As always, if you would like to work with me more directly, have any questions, or would like to be a guest on the podcast, you can find links to all that and more on my website, modernmuseumeducation.com. I'll see you back here next time, and in the meantime, please remember that your work is not childish just because you work with children.